Are you ready now?
No, I'm not ready.
You're not
Don't
ready?
go
I'm
live.
ready.
Yeah, don't
You'll
go
go live?
live. Don't go.
Don't go
No.
live. I already went live. I went live.
Okay. Then I guess I'm ready.
And I guess we're here. What's going on? It's your boy, the coach. Welcome back to the Coach's Huddle with the Phil Meets family. And I am here with my man. It's cover two, back at it again. Recap the react. Huh. It's chess. It ain't checkers.
The shit's chess. It ain't checkers.
Got my man 10 grand, Jesse Naylor. What's up, Jess? How you doing?
Good, man. Good. Happy to be back. Cover 2 Mondays. I love this show, man.
Bro, I got a feeling.
It's the show where we're not going to get to half the topics. We're going to get off on some tangent. We're going to have a major disagreement, probably sparked by the chat because, the chat likes to stir things up. So, yeah, it's fun. I enjoy it.
I'm here for it all, baby. So, look, this is what I want to get into. Like, look, let's level set. Making topics for today's show was kind of hard. All right. It was a little touch and go. And one of the reasons is because we're actually coming up on the dead period, the illustrious dead period. Okay. This is the period where tennis and baseball rule the airwaves. Okay. And we just have to put up with it. It's 50 days of us making up content, repurposing old takes and narratives. But before we get into all of that mind-numbing content, which we all will painstakingly go through until we get to the end of July, which is the start of NFL football training camp, we got blessed with one last piece of content. The white smoke, the Pope smoke, if you will. St. John Lynch himself donned his presence to Matt Mayoko and gave an interview. A lot of things were covered. We basically went from the very beginning all the way down to offseason. Talked about his approach. They went all the way as low and as granular from approach to John Lynch talking about how they were going to get younger and cheaper. Their approach in free agency worked all the way through their methodology through the draft. And a lot of things were said. But one thing that did come out to me is the context of what John Lynch was saying. And that leads me to my first topic, which is still stuck in Vegas. Lynch said that they had to address the 2023 Super Bowl loss this offseason. I believe one of the direct quotes were they tried to move on from the Super Bowl and then they had to address it. Moving on. And what really struck me is that John really talked about the effect that losing the Super Bowl had on the locker room, the lasting effects and how they really had to find closure. And for me, all of that's cool and it plays, but it is a little surprising that we're here in 2025, less than 2 months away from the start of training camp. And, John was more focused on talking about the loss of the Super Bowl rather than the 6-11 season that we just lost. And I guess the operative question is, why is the team still processing a 2-year-old loss? And did the emotional hangover from Vegas hijack the 2024 season? Go ahead, Jess.
I think it definitely hijacked the 2024 season. I think that's pretty clear, but I didn't listen to that interview, and I went back and listened to it a second time after you'd brought this up as a topic, just to make sure I didn't miss anything or miss any context. I didn't feel like he was bringing it up like, oh gosh, 2 years ago was way more important than last year. Because the way that Matt Mayoko phrased some of those questions were he would bring up and compare, okay, well, this offseason compared to last offseason coming off of a Super Bowl. And so John Lynch, of course, has to address the question at hand going back to last offseason compared to this offseason. But he also talked about how 6-11 was a season where they underachieved big time. And that's not what they're here to do. He also talked about how the 6-11 season is it started basically everything this offseason and how it went, and getting rid of Debo and moving on from some of those contracts because they felt like last year coming off the Super Bowl, they wanted to give that team one more chance, but it was clear after a 6-11 season that it was over for that regime, and they had to move on from some of those players, the Hargraves and the Floyds and whoever else, because it just they were too old and too expensive. And so this offseason was about getting younger, bringing in that youth, resetting the clock when it comes to all of the money that's going to be available in the future, re-signing their key guys that they feel like are the core for the next few years. And that was on the heels of a 6-11 season. So I don't necessarily, or I didn't take that interview as if he was, or saying that the team was stuck in 2 seasons ago and what happened 2 seasons ago more so than this last season. And when you look at what has happened this offseason, if they were stuck in 2 seasons ago, they would have ran it back again. And they did anything but. When it comes to a roster turnover of 38%, that's clearly because of a 6-11 season.
Yeah, definitely. And I agree. A couple of things is I just threw up some comments that John had put out during the year, and one of them definitely was you know, you just can't keep being aggressive every year. At some point you have to throttle back. Another thing that he said was it's never fun watching good players, good people who help build the culture walk out the door, but again, it was necessary. I think that John really shaped out how they themselves knew that they had some tough things to do this offseason. And really, for me, and I hate to put it out there, like, I'm not a glass half full guy. Everybody knows that, but you gotta love on them when they do the right thing. They have done a lot in a very short amount of time. From moving out from all the players that they've had, then being able to actually stay disciplined within free agency. That's another thing that they said in free agency that we talked about. Even though we warned our fans, I think it's still a tough pill to swallow when you see the players leave. I spoke to how good our roster was. We had swing tackles making huge money. So he touched on Jalen Moore leaving. So one thing that I think that we've got to understand is that there are some things about the league that you just cannot ignore. And for where John Lynch had spoke about moving on and getting younger and getting cheaper, I think also another big thing that he said, which was a big deal, is that a lot of their attack or their rules of engagement and how they were going to go about free agency was really predicated on the fact of keeping their real core, their major core, which was Brock Purdy, George Kittle, Fred Warner, and making sure that those guys were locked in and moving on from certain pieces. Now, when you look at the Super Bowl window, if you will, if you could say that we need to get younger and cheaper, did John, in so many certain ways, kind of say, "Look, we're not going for a Super Bowl"?
No. In fact, he said the opposite at the end. He had the chance. He had the opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
He was asked by Matt Mayoko, what would be success this year? Like, what would define success? And Lynch says it's Super Bowl or bust, essentially. He said, well, what I know is at the end of the season, there is one team that's happy. So I think that ultimately that will define if we are that team or not. Like, it'll
Do you
define
believe
whether
him?
we're happy. I do, man. I've been saying this for a couple weeks. You brought it up. I think we talked about this a couple weeks ago. Does this team really believe that they're a Super Bowl contender? And I've been saying that, yes, I do believe in their hearts, they believe they're Super Bowl contenders. And I think that this backs it up. I will say this team might be the most interesting that I can remember, at least in the short term, when it comes to how much dead cap space they're carrying, yet how much open cap space they still have, how many young players they're expecting to contribute to this team while also still being contenders. I can't think of a team, at least as of late, that has had all of those things going at the same time. Like that's a lot of juggling going on. But the 49ers might prove that it's possible to do all of those things at once, which would be kind of crazy.
I got to be honest, man. On the low, they're kind of making me a believer. They really are. I mean, they're okay. The reason why you don't feel like they could have pulled all of this off is when you see how they moved in the offseason last year, you just didn't see them being able to like rip the Band-Aid off, get deals done, be able to stave off, social media hype, move on from players. I said this, and I think you remember me saying this a while ago. Please don't make me look bad on my own channel, which is I said that I'll know that they're serious about winning, or I will know that they're serious about cleaning house if they move on from Debo. I said that. I said that's the one guy that I'm looking at. If they find a way to keep this man, because I think Debo was due to make $28 million this season under us. And I knew like if they paid him that money, then this is Pyongyang, man. Like we're looking at the dear leader. Nothing makes sense. So for me, you got to give him credit. I think the first domino to drop really was getting Saleh. That put continuity in the building, brought in a lot of other. I think bringing in Coach Saleh actually shored up all of the coaching situations about bringing in guys on defense. He bring in Brent Boyer to cover on special teams. You got some guys in Pinnock, who's supposed to be a young ascending player. We'll see about that. You got Bryce Huff, who's come in, a guy that spent some time with Coach Saleh as an edge rusher. And then, for me, I think the light at the end of the tunnel for me, I think I have a sneaky question for you.
Okay.
When did you start, what stage of the offseason did you start believing that this was a good offseason? At what stage?
I feel like I think pretty early, honestly. I think when they got rid of Debo, initially they'd gotten rid of Juszczyk as well. I was like, oh, okay.
They
Like
ain't
I
playing
really
games.
am feeling. Yeah, they're not playing.
They ain't playing.
I would say bringing back Juszczyk was like, okay, that's a little strange. But I think after the first wave of free agency, you really started to see like, oh, they're really setting up the future right now. That to me told me that they were serious about what I had hoped that they had done last year, week 4, week 5, when I started calling for this, like do this at the trade deadline, knowing that would never happen. And then again, I was like, God, they run this thing back again.
Right.
Debo, again, you talked about it. I mean, that was a big one. Juszczyk was a big one, which then again, they brought him back. But ultimately, I think after the first wave of free agency, after those first couple of days happened, and then Bosa, that was the real one. When Bosa left and went to the Bills, and it's like he definitely would have chosen to play with his brother if the money was the same. The 49ers were not willing to pay him enough money or give him the years to override that money to get him in the building. That was like, all right, they're doing exactly what they should be doing.
You took mine. That's what it was for me.
The Bosa
when they didn't blink on Bosa, that for me. And then at the time, I was still hoping against hope for Drew Dalman. So when the fact that they moved on from Joey and didn't take that, it made me feel like, okay, this isn't a rubber stamp. And it also, another thing that would have really hurt me about us picking up Joey is not only is that it wouldn't have been a good player or we would have overpaid for him, but it also would have meant that there is some degree of the defense that Saleh doesn't control. Because I wouldn't believe that Robert Saleh would have wanted Joey Bosa. He would have came up and he would have he would have told the company line and said how excited he was to have him. But it was just nothing about Joey Bosa that says that he would be like a Robert Saleh guy. So for me, I think the Bosa, not signing Bosa, and then I gotta be real, the draft for me as well. Like once we got through the draft and I saw that Coach Saleh had like basically the first 4 to 5 picks in the draft. That made me feel like, okay, they're not playing. They're giving him exactly what he needs to be here. So, yeah, man, I got to give it to him, man. As far as like the offseason is concerned, I would say the nagging thing that has really stuck out to me is, excuse me, to me is injuries. We got guys who haven't found the field. Michael Williams, he's had some problem getting to the field. He's had some hamstring injuries. We already know about Alfred Collins has yet to see the field. So we just got some young guys that are trying to get on, and not only just the rookies, but just the overall team. Guys not being healthy to be able to get through the mandatory minicamp that we just had last week. But outside of it, it's looking like all of these guys are going to take about that 50-day hiatus to be ready for camp, and be ready to go and be dependent on. And speaking of being dependent on, that takes us to our next topic.
Quick. Well, hold on, real quick. I do think, and I don't want this to get lost, because the 49ers might have screwed this up, but not because of they made any wrong moves, right? And so I want to make this clear right now. There is a possibility that last year's draft class, especially now that Malik Mustafa's hurt, might not be as good as what we once thought. Like, let's say Ricky Pearsall doesn't pan out or something. I'm just going worst case scenario, right? This is not a prediction, but let's say last year's draft class isn't as good as what we once thought it was, and then this year's draft class is a dud. Those two things, like, paired together, means the future of this team in being competitive is set back multiple years, and they could be in trouble, next year going forward because of that. But that doesn't mean, if that happens, I'm saying worst case scenario, if that happens, we still have to look at the way they handled this offseason as the right way to do it. They just swung and missed. They went about it with the right approach. They had all of the good intentions. They had the right approach there. You just have to then execute. And maybe they did, maybe they didn't. But if they didn't, that doesn't mean that this approach has to be lost, or that we can go back with revisionist history and be like, well, remember that offseason when they did this, they should have done this and this and this. No, in the moment, they made the right decision. Now, does it work out for them? Time's eventually going to tell that, but I don't want revisionist history in a year from now if those draft picks don't pan out and say, oh, well, they completely went about this the wrong way, because resetting the clock the way that they have was 100% the right decision. It just was.
Yeah, I love the approach. I think this offseason has taught me more about the organization than I've ever learned about them in years past, especially with this regime, because I think this is the longest regime since I've been a fan that I've ever been a part of. 9 years. It's a long ass time. For me, I think that what I like about what they've done is they've shown me a deeper level of their application of process. I believe that when we're winning, the application of process always seems to be win at all costs. We're going to do what we need to do to make it to the Super Bowl. If we're a guy away, we're going to get that guy. If we're a contract away, we're going to get that contract. And it kind of went from and my personal angst with the team has been because I've seen us go from underground guys to overhyped, overpaid, top-heavy teams. And for me, it has been painstaking to see us go through that journey where you love your team when you feel like, man, everybody here earns their job. Everybody works hard. These guys are going to scrap tooth and nail to win games. And then they get to the point where they get to the top of their prime, and then they start winning games their way. You know what I mean? And we know how to win games. And what happens is you can't really do that, or you're going to lose. You're going to find a way to get punched in the mouth because people are going to drag you out of your process. That's part of staying consistent, is being the same type of teams all the time. I mean, if the Patriots taught us anything, is that winning is that you don't got to look sexy to win, but winning is sexy. You know what I mean? Like I
Yeah.
don't care how boring we look. Our process is our process. And for about 4 years, I've kind of felt like we've gotten away from our process. And it's frustrated me. But this offseason, with how they've gone about, they've been calculated. They've been calculated with how they move from the organization down, with bringing in coaches, making sure that they don't spend a lot of money in the offseason. Even, I mean, you know what else? The biggest thing, the biggest MVP moment, the biggest goated moment of the offseason, Brock Purdy's contract. We're like not even talking about it anymore. Have you noticed that? It's a foregone conclusion. Yeah, they did such a good job with the contract. It is a boring topic to talk about. That thing had like about a good week of juice in it for us to talk about. But after a while, it was like, dude, what else can you say about a good contract? But it's good. What else can you say for a contract where both parties won, but both parties won? And you know, for me, it's let me see that the organization is calculated. They do move in a certain way, but it's just they know how to adjust to the environment that they're in. That's what changes the process that they choose. And the environment that they're in fiscally right now is causing them to change their process. And the fact that they changed their process this quickly on a dime and seemingly has been able to execute. Now, we don't necessarily know if we're going to get success from the moves, but this harkens back to your point that you just made, that I'm not more focused on the win-loss of the end result, but I'm more focused on the fact that they went out and did it. Like they went out and actually made the attempt of trying to be a team that is, look, we're not going to cut off our nose to spite our faces. We're not going to get out here in free agency and try to get with the Joneses and get all of these names in here so we could so we can look good for the first month of the season and then fall off. We understand that our cap is in hell right now. We've got to eat a lot of dead money. I mean, we've done a phenomenal job. So I want to get into our next topic because, you know, that's about as positive. You better clip that. That's about as positive you're going to get me on this team for the rest of the year. One thing that I wanted to bring up is the D-line vision clear or is it crowded? We've had a lot of guys come in on the defensive line, particularly let's just go with the interior defensive line. We've got Kalia Davis, Jordan Elliott, Kevin Givens, Alfred Collins, CJ West, Sebastian Valdez, Evan Anderson. Moving along into edges, we've got Sam Akunau, Bryce Huff, Robert Bill Jr., Michael Williams, Yatir Matus, Teron Jackson, Jonathan Garvin, and Nick Bosa. Flat out, the first 5 draft picks were on defense. Lynch says the bar has been raised, but with veterans gone and no more splashy names around like Javon Hargraves and DeForest Buckner or Eric Armstead, with those veterans gone and roles undefined, is this a competition or a full-on identity crisis in the trenches? Who is going to make a name for themselves? Have they intelligently designed this defensive line, or are they simply throwing as many bodies at the problem as possible?
No, I think they've intelligently designed it. I mean, I like what they did in the draft. And it's clear, like, if we just go through it, we know that the 3 rookies along the defensive line are going to make the team. So that's 3. Let's say they keep 8 total defensive linemen. So that's 3. Bosa's 4. Obviously, Huff is 5. I think after that, it's a competition. And we might get to that a little bit later as far as who we think makes it and who doesn't. But ultimately, the fact that we are here, think about this for a second. Listen to the question that you just asked and then put yourself into free agency when they had just gutted the defensive line. And it was like they cut 3 players that were starters last year along this defensive line and then didn't sign any defensive linemen
at all.
And we're looking at it going, where's
you got a hole there?
Line? You got a bit of a hole there. Versus the question now is it too deep, essentially? Like it's a pretty damn good problem to have. Now, yes, I think when you look at the back end, there's a bunch of fluff and guys that ultimately have no chance of making this team. But that's every team, really. I mean, right now you're at 90 plus men on this roster. You've got like 14 defensive linemen. So, of course, there's some guys that have no chance to make it. You're just trying to use those bodies to get through training camp. But I can say that about every team. At the very least, though, you've got 5 for sure. Hey, these are your 5. After that, we'll see about it. Or here's your 6, whatever the number is. We couldn't have said that months ago. And so for me, absolutely love the direction of the defensive line. Again, did they hit? Did they draft these guys too early? I mean, that we'll find all of that out. But the effort and the vision, at least in this moment, is there.
Okay. I don't see the vision at edge. I think that they've done the best they
Even
can.
after Huff?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because for me, I think that, and I'm not a big specialist guy. I'm really not. Either you play defensive end or you don't, honestly. And I've got to be able to see what Bryce Huff is going to do with us on an extended amount of time. Robert Bill Jr., nobody's talking about him taking a step in. This is what, year 3 for him?
No, he's not going to make this team, I don't think.
Yeah. Robert Bill Jr. is year 3. Michael Williams, I understand us putting out our tip of the spear, 11th pick overall guy to put them out there. But outside of what he can do as far as stopping the run and setting the edge, I'm not betting on Yetur Gross-Matos to be available, let alone finish the season. He didn't do it last year, and that's off of what we already know was a checkered history coming out of Carolina when we got him. So right now, Jonathan Garvin, I like him. I do like Jonathan Garvin, but come on, man, you can't count on Jonathan Garvin. So really, it is Nick Bosa and a bunch of guys, in my opinion. There's really, outside of Nick Bosa, there's nobody that is a veteran that would start as an edge rusher on a team right now, outside of Nick Bosa, start playing edge. Would you agree or disagree?
I don't necessarily disagree with that, but I mean, that's why you spent your first round pick to go get that guy.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, like, I don't have an issue with it. If that was your biggest need, you certainly address it the easiest way you could while also keeping this team young and inexpensive for the 2025 season.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't have an issue with it. I mean, yeah, certainly if we want to nitpick and say, oh, there's no veteran starter. Yeah, but that doesn't mean that it's not a good option.
Right. I also believe that as far as defensive tackle too, there's Jordan Elliott and really a bunch of guys. Alfred Collins hasn't made his way to the field. CJ West is a rookie, and I don't necessarily know what you're going to get out of Sebastian Valdez or Kevin Givens. Kalia Davis, I don't think Kalia Davis makes this team this year. So, I'm not here to say that the defensive line is, completely out of whack and that I don't see a vision whatsoever, but there's a lot of proving that they got to do. They got to earn their identity. I think that I'm willing to say
clear.
that.
That's clear, and that's for all the rookies, and that's what's going to make this tough. I mean, and that's what could derail this season, and that's where ultimately the decisions they made and who they drafted might end up being the long-term issue. The process was right, but it doesn't mean that they drafted the right players. And even if they did, there is a good possibility that those 3 guys that we're relying on for big-time snaps don't show out their rookie year. I mean, that's pretty standard. That's pretty normal. And when they do show out, it usually takes some time. So yeah, there is a possibility where it just didn't work out, or even if it does, that it doesn't work out this year defensively. And that's why this goes back to the conversation we had on the 4-man front last week or 2 weeks ago or whenever it was. This has to be an offensively led team. I'm tired of people blaming the defense in situations like the Super Bowl where they held the Kansas City Chiefs to 12 freaking points. The special teams gave up 7. They get a turnover to start the second half, and the offense does nothing with it, yet they're led by an elite quarterback and an elite offensive-minded head coach, and they can't score more than 19, and we're blaming the defense for why they lost the Super Bowl. I'm over that stuff. I refuse to think that this fan base is dense enough to look at the defense this year and the way it's set up and be like, well, I mean, the defense needed to do a better job. I don't care if the defense gives up 25 points a game. The offense better be ready to score close to 30. That's where all of your veterans, all the great veterans on this team reside for the most part. That's where you paid your quarterback. That's why you've got Kyle Shanahan. The offense has to lead this thing. It just has to.
I mean, my biggest thing right now, just to push back on you that I don't think that it will, is that we don't close. We don't close on offense. And the only way that you could be able to lean on an offense is, I'm going to just be honest with you. The only way you're going to have to lean on an offense is not running away from somebody, but standing tall and getting somebody out the mud. I mean, sometimes it's good to know that your offense has twin turbos and you can get on the Autobahn and fly and outrace everybody, and that's fine. But every now and again, you're going to have to get somebody out of a rut with an offense. You're going to have a front-loading winch that you can pull somebody out of the muck and mire with. And that's not our offense. They're on notice until I've seen that. This is not an offense that can churn out the last 8 minutes of a game and kill and take the air out of the football and kill an offense on the field. I mean, kill a defense on the field. That's not what they do, bro. And particularly, really a lot of it is two reasons, quite honestly. They don't invest in the offensive line, and Kyle will not commit to it near the end of the year. He just doesn't do it. So, go ahead.
Well, I mean, that's, and that's where we're going to have to see if Kyle's evolved this thing. I mean, and that's the beauty of this season. And that's what I'm so excited about, is that the 49ers are either going to lose a bunch of close games and it's going to be the same old, or they're going to figure out how to win these close games, because these games are going to be closer this year. They just are. And if they figure out how to win those games, then to me, when you look at the future of this team, you can legitimately say, okay, you know what? Kyle learned something throughout the course of the season where he had to learn how to manage tight game situations down the stretch. That will make him better when that situation arises the next time, hopefully, if there is a next time and they're blessed enough to get that situation in the Super Bowl. Maybe now he's had the practice versus in the past, they're sitting there blowing teams out repeatedly. And then when they get in that situation, it's like, oh my, what happened here? It's like they got punched in the mouth for the first time and they don't know how to react. They're finally in a tough fight and their cardio gives out on them. That's what the beauty of this season is that they are going to be in those situations, and Kyle is either going to elevate repeatedly in those situations or he's not, and we'll find out.
Yeah, I mean, for me, this is what I like about it is this: we've been thrusted back into the proving grounds, and I love it because we've got a favorable roster. I mean, we got a favorable schedule, and right now. Even John Lynch said it, is that, usually we don't get a schedule as good as this one, as far as having with the travel, with the level of competition that we have. So really the gauntlet is laid out to see if they could just keep it fundamental, right? Like, can you just keep it phonics? Can we show up and win a game, close games? Because I think that in order for us to be a good football team, it's not going to be the names. It's going to be the entire roster. You're going to have to use everything to get this season. This season is like an episode of Chopped. You got to use the raisins. You got to use the pork. You got to use the apples. You got to make me something. Everything has to get used.
Yeah, but see, and that's again, you may disagree and say, hey, the 49ers aren't going to be good because the offense isn't going to be able to do those things. That's fine. But ultimately, the season is going to go how the offense dictates that it goes. Like the expectation now, unless the defense just way overachieves, but going into it, the expectation for the defense cannot be high. I don't care if Robert Saleh is there or not. I don't care how many picks they spent over there. There is so many moving parts on that defense. The expectation should be that the defense is better than last year, certainly, but it cannot be that the defense is the reason that they win games game in and game out. The offense is going to have to be the reason one way or another. Now, maybe it's the reason they lose games, but maybe it's the reason that they win games. Either way, this season is going to be dictated on how the offense performs, in my opinion.
That is so interesting that you bring that up, because that was a topic. I'm looking for it in kind of like my topic bank, but that was a topic that came up about a week ago on, I believe I asked you, or it came up in 4-Man Front But I asked, how much grace are you willing to give Robert Saleh this season? And you've all but answered where you said that you expect the defense to take a little bit of a dip, but you expect them to be better than last year. And for you, that's okay. You're okay with that.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to have to be better than last year, but it cannot. I'm not going to expect that it's better than the offense. The offense has to be higher ranked, in my opinion. It just has to if this team's going to be successful.
All right. So let me ask you this. What does the offense have to do performative wise for you to feel like Kyle Shanahan should be on the hot seat or Kyle needs to go?
I mean, if they're not,
is that too much to ask right now during this?
Yeah,
this part?
I mean, that's a lot. That's a lot because how did there's so many other little things like what if the defense way overperforms and makes up for it, or the special teams wins you sim games? I don't know. I don't. Again, and this is where I don't judge Kyle Shanahan as the offensive coordinator. I judge him as the head coach of the team. If I just look at it and be like, well, the offense was good, but the team sucked, like Kyle deserves to stay here forever. The offense is doing what it's supposed to do. I feel like that's the narrow-minded approach that most fans, when they look at Kyle Shanahan, they just look at him and address him as if he's the offensive coordinator. It's like, well, the defense didn't do its job, but Kyle did his. Like, hello, the defense is under Kyle. Kyle is the head coach, not the offensive coordinator. So if the defense sucks and the special teams suck, and that's why you didn't make it to the playoffs, you're the head coach. I don't care if your offense was the best in NFL history. If the other two units sucked and you made those decisions in hiring the coach and those personnel decisions week in and week out, that's a you problem. You're the head coach, not the offensive coordinator. So it's all in how this team goes. If this team doesn't make the playoffs, it's time to move on from Kyle. But the expectation has to be that they make the playoffs minimum. It has to be.
All right.
If the offense ranks first and they don't make the playoffs, Kyle's still got to go. I don't care about what the offense does or doesn't do.
Chess, it ain't checkers.
Yo, so wait a minute. So you saying that even if they don't make the playoffs, hold on. Say that again. If they make the playoffs
and the offense is ranks first,
and they don't make the playoffs, and Kyle still got to go.
Yeah, because he's not the offensive coordinator. He's the head coach.
You know what I love about that? That pins the game management shit to Kyle's chest, because that's the only way that they don't go to the playoffs with a good offense, is that their game management is absolutely piss poor. I just don't think that Robert Saleh would just come in here and completely lay a fucking. I don't see that. But what I do say is there's a lot of what I will say is that there's a lot of paths to Kyle being gone by this season. A lot of paths, and it could get bad quick. It really could.
There's a lot of paths. But I don't think that they're the most likely scenario. I think the most likely scenario is this team makes the playoffs and Kyle's still going to be here. And that's fine. That's totally fine. But they got to make the playoffs. They have to.
Yeah. All right. Let's get into our next topic, man. Niners are in top 5 most underrated teams entering the 24-25 season by PFF. Right now, I mean, look, PFF data tells a story about how underrated the team is, and how they're ready for, people need to watch out for the Niners. Of course, they've already touched on our week schedule, the fact that the Niners have pretty much the most favorable traveling schedule of any team based on the West Coast. We've gotten all of our contract situations handled. Robert Saleh being back in with the continuity on the defense. They basically tabbed us as one of the teams that people really need to watch out for, a sleeping giant, so to speak. Is this more fodder that we get from the national media? That's, I will say this, the national media loves us, bro. They cannot quit us. Even on our worst, on death's doorstep. We'll be like, dude, we're horrible. And Vegas will have us like Niners favored. We're like, how? But is that this instance, or do you really believe that we're a team that everybody should be afraid of this year?
I mean, I think the truth lies somewhere in the middle. I think it's a horrible article by PFF, first of all. I don't think it was well put together.
It wasn't
good.
The
teams that they chose, that when I look at what they said here, In what world? The word they used was overlooked, not a sleeper or whatever. Overlooked. The top 5 overlooked teams. Well, in what world? You go to betting
Who's not
websites,
looking at them?
yeah, the 49ers are highly bet on to make noise this year. They're still one of the favorites. They're the favorite to win their division, which is crazy. When you go across the national media, everybody's talking about the 49ers. So, and I feel like, every year there's a team that goes from worst to first in their division. I think choosing the 49ers is like the laziest take that you can have. I don't think that they're going to win the division, but I think that would be the easiest pick out of all of the teams that finished probably last in their division last year. So I don't I don't at all think. I think the 49ers are low-hanging fruit, and that's why I think it's a bad article. I don't think that they put together good teams. I think they had the Bengals in there as well. Who's looking past the Bengals? Everybody looks at Joe Burrow and that team and that
So this
offense
is who they
last
got.
year.
All right. So 5 overlooked teams heading into the 2025 NFL season. They got Bengals,
Mhm.
Dallas, us, the Colts. Wow. Us.
I think the
and the
Colts is a good
Seahawks.
one.
Okay.
I think the Colts, I think the Seahawks those are good choices. I feel like this is one of those articles, at least to me, the direction of the article should be, 5 teams that basically nobody is thinking can have a good season. And then you're kind of making some bold predictions. I just don't look at the Bengals or 49ers as bold predictions in this scenario, which is why I think the article sucks.
In the write-up, it says, despite dealing with a slew of injuries and key players, the 49ers were the NFL's second highest graded team with a losing record in 2024. When healthy, this team is loaded with stars, including quarterback Brock Purdy, running back CMC, wide receiver Brandon Ayuk, tackle Trent Williams, all the names, whatever. If all or even most of those players play 17 games, the 49ers have a real chance to return to the postseason. Purdy has played well enough throughout his career to sign a massive contract extension through this offseason. However, as his supporting cast crumbled last season, so did his production. On the bright side, Purdy is the highest graded quarterback in the NFL through week 6 last season. That came at a time when the 49ers had a healthy supporting cast aside from McCaffrey. Look, it is a bit of a lazy take. You're kind of seeing a team where it's really not easy. It's not really anything to write home about when you're saying that the Niners got good bones. We're probably one of the most loaded teams as of probably within the last 3 to 4 years. So when we taking a step down, it is kind of disingenuous to say, who's a sneaky team right now? The Niners. It's like, I see what you did there.
And it wasn't like, hey, this team might win the Super Bowl. It was, to make the postseason. Like, oh, really? Wow. Way to go out on a limb that the 49ers might make the playoffs. Everybody's picking them to make the playoffs right now.
I got something for you, though. Is PFF trying to play like they're trying to like set the bar to kind of give us like an easy win? We're like, yo, they're a sneaky team to make the playoffs. Like as if to say that we're that bad that if making the playoffs this year would be a success. Let me ask you another question. Do you think that making the playoffs is something that is a standard bearer for us, or would it be a success based on what we've been through in the offseason? Because both two things, they're the same. We both made the playoffs, but just the trajectory of what we're supposed to do versus a goal is two different things. Do you look at this as a goal, or do you look at this as an expectation?
Oh, making the playoffs is an expectation. Making the playoffs is an expectation. I think anything above and beyond that would be awesome. Like if they won a game in the playoffs or made it to an NFC championship somehow, I think that would be going above expectation.
Above and beyond, yeah.
Yeah. But expectation is they make the playoffs. Whatever happens after that, in my opinion, is cherry on top.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. I don't think that making the playoffs is something that would be a good goal or something when you look at the season. I would be happy about it based on all of the moving parts that we had. But really, making the playoffs with what they just signed Brock for, like, I got to be honest. Now, the deal was team friendly and it wasn't top 5 money, but it was playoff money. Goddamn, you make it top 7, but that's playoff money, dog.
Yeah, I mean, or at the very again, like, yeah, I mean, but quarterback wins isn't a stat. If Brock Purdy comes out and see, this is the difference. I said if Kyle Shanahan has the number one offense, but they don't make the playoffs, he still needs to go because he's the head coach of this team. But if Brock Purdy balls out and this team doesn't make the playoffs, that's not on Purdy. Unless he just somehow down the stretch of every game is like the reason. It's like he threw 4 touchdowns, 400 yards, and then had ball in hand
2
to go
picks.
in and threw a pick every single time. Okay, that's different. But if you just look at like how a normal season would probably play out if he ended up being a really good player and putting up good numbers, if they don't make the playoffs, he still did his job. Like he got paid to do a job. He executed and did his job. That is different than Kyle Shanahan. So to me, I can separate quarterback play versus did the team make the playoffs or not. And even if they make the playoffs, I can separate and be like, yeah, they made the playoffs, but it certainly wasn't because of their quarterback. And I think that that's the difference. I think too many people put the onus of winning
Either
on the
or.
shoulders of a quarter. Yeah, it's like, oh, well, so-and-so hasn't been to a Super Bowl. I guess he's not any good. It's like, cool. Well, then you clearly just don't watch football because if it's all on one player who isn't even on the field for 50% of the snaps, then I don't know what to tell you. Like,
You know what I love about this season too is that it's showing the maturity of the fan base, where the same amount of excitement or expectation or standard that we have for winning a Super Bowl is the exact same energy that we have for making the playoffs, where we know how to read our team. We know exactly what they're supposed to do if they're doing if they're operating at their very best. And I like the fact that the standard for us this year is to make the playoffs. And there's nobody like poo-pooing the season like, well, we're not a Super Bowl team this year. Like, whatever. Nah, I really am to be honest with you, in certain ways, I'm more excited about this season and the outcomes of making the playoffs than I was about 2023 making it to the Super Bowl. Because this season, we really get to see what certain guys are made of. Honestly. Do you feel where I'm coming from on that perspective?
No, I do. I do. I mean, a Super Bowl run's special though. I don't know. We're kind of in a weird spot where I feel like we're kind of level-headed, and I feel like most of the people in this chat are probably level-headed. But when you look at just the 49er fan base as a whole, I mean, we capture a small fraction of the 49ers fan base that comes in, chats, listens to us on a regular basis, what have you. But when you go just out into the ether and watch what the fan base is saying, bro, I think they still think that this is a Super Bowl ready team the way that they're talking.
Hold on.
A big chunk of this fan base believes that.
Really?
Yeah, and I think that that's crazy. I think it's absolutely crazy to think that.
Dog, that's why we got to get out there, bro. Do you honestly believe there's a huge swath of the fan base that believes that this is business as usual and that this is basically a reload, run it back year? Nobody thinks that we had to pivot at all. Not nobody, but a huge swath of the fan base. They believe that the pivot was just to be Super Bowl bound again.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's insane, bro.
Yeah, 100%. I believe that. I mean, I'm seeing it everywhere right now. Like the way that the fan base is talking, it's like they feel like this team should be right back in the Super Bowl mix. Like, all right, well, I think you're going to be pretty disappointed if that's the case, but.
Dude, that's wild. Let's knock out some super chats before we knock out another topic. We've got Davism. Davism is killing us. Davism, Patriots Builders of Montana. When did you realize Niners were your team in the NFL? 94? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I was born in 83, so 88, 89-ish. Yeah.
Same. Davism's Patriot Builders of Montana, $9.99. I was dressed in red and gold in the crib, but I remember watching Steve Young in camp at Sierra College for 2 years before he started and loved his arm. Once he started and I got to see him move over. Dude, Steve Young was a dog. You know what I'm saying? You know what? I'd take Steve Young in today's era of football over Joe Montana.
Oh, yes. Yeah, Steve Young. If Steve
Young would cook today.
Insane.
He would cook. Who would give me a comp for Steve Young today? Who would Steve Young? Hold on, Corey. Who would Steve Young be today? Like Steve Young, I think he gives you like, I got to be honest with you. He gives me like the gamesmanship of like a Josh Allen, not the size, but just like the game. Steve can make every throw.
Yeah. He didn't have the strongest arm, but he can make every throw.
He can make every throw. That's why I said it that way. He can make every throw.
Super precise, though. Oh my gosh, he was so accurate. His ball placement was impeccable. Impeccable.
Who would Steve Young be today?
I don't think there's a fair comp. I mean, you know
that's so hard.
You know what's crazy about it is when the 49ers moved up to number 3 and Kyle talked about his ideal quarterback, he's like, yeah, you want Drew Brees that can move like Lamar. He was really just describing Steve Young. He was just describing Steve Young. I mean, he's not Lamar by any means.
No,
right?
No.
I mean, he's not there, but he certainly is. Everything that Drew Brees did, he would do that easily today. Easily.
Who would that's bothering me. What would Steve Young player comp be today?
I have no idea.
I'd say like all right. So what's Steve Young's number? What was Steve? Like 6'2"? 6'1"?
6'2".
6'2", like what, 230, 220?
225 probably, yeah.
6'2", 225. Like, what is Baker?
I think build-wise, he's close to Baker, but athletic-wise, and accuracy-wise, he's
right. Like, imagine if Baker, but I'm just saying, like, imagine if Baker was way more accurate and, like, a step faster. Baker would be crazy. Because Baker doesn't have the greatest arm, but Baker has a very good arm.
Baker has a better arm, I think, than Steve. Like as far as just a howitzer, I mean, he's got a strong. He's actually, I think he's a cross between, like athletically, I actually think he measures up with like Hurts a lot, like build and athletic wise, he's very close to Hurts.
Stout.
And then he's just got the pinpoint accuracy that. Like,
who he is. You know who he is. I get it. I know who he is. He's prime Russ. Russell Wilson. Hold on, Russell Wilson with poise and like mental acuity, like processing. Like Russ was a little bit of a robot.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I don't think there's a fair comp. I just think there's bits and pieces. There's bits and pieces of certain guys you can see, but yeah, I mean that's it. He's basically a cross between Burrow and Hurts. That's exactly what he is. You take all the passing ability of Burrow, arm strength, accuracy,
and then you give him athleticism,
and you give him Hurts athleticism. That is Steve Young.
That's Steve Young. Steve Young would kill the league. All right, let's get to our next super chat. Corey Coleman, 1999. Thanks, brother. Help me understand. How does anyone believe that the Niners offensive line is gonna be up to par this season? Ben Barch is a journeyman who can't stay healthy, and Dillard is going to have to play 3 to 4 games. Dillard?
Yeah, Andre Dillard.
Okay. The rest of the division has good defensive lines now, too. Well, one thing about offensive line is it's not about the individuals, and I know we like to do that, especially on the defensive line, because defensive line is more of they play as a team, but it is more individualistic. Offensive line is really about a good unit. You can pick out weaknesses across the line, but I'm really focused on them finding a good unit where they all play better together. One thing about it is that, yes, we're going to have to see if the offensive line can play stout against some of the best defensive lines in the division, not alone in our conference. But for me, it really is seeing how they play out in the first quarter of the season. The first 4 games will really let you know how the offensive line is going to play against each other, how they're protecting Brock. One of the biggest things that I would like to see is how are they going to move with gotta have it downs. And basically the biggest help of the offensive line for me is twofold. It's George Kittle and Christian McCaffrey. the way Christian runs and sets up blocks, he intelligently helps out the offensive line. That's one of the reasons why when we don't get a runner to have Christian McCaffrey's caliber, the offensive line gets kind of exposed even more. So it's a tough hill to climb, but we gotta roll with who we got.
Yeah, I mean, and this is where I implore people to really do their homework across the rest of the NFL. This offensive line, in comparison to the NFL, is slightly above average. It just is. And
Middle of the
that's
pack.
what you have to deal with. That's what you have to deal with. Many teams deal with worse. You can't have everything. You cannot be elite everywhere. You're going to have a weakness somewhere. 49ers haven't put enough assets into that offensive line. They are going to be weaker than what you want them to be there, but they're still better than over half the league there. They just are.
Yeah. I mean, it's sad, but, there used to be a time where if you didn't have trenches, you weren't going to win, period. But the game, they've taken a lot of the physicality out of the game where not having a good offensive line really doesn't hurt you as much. I mean, you got to understand this. The reason why you got an offensive line is because when you're a defensive end, you could literally cut the head off of a quarterback with your body if you caught him blindsided. You could hit him and land on him, right? You could play within the echo of the whistle. You could get in the back and use slap techniques and drag people down. They're trying. The hip drop tackle has been taken out. The clipping, all of the stunts where they ear hold offensive linemen to make double stunts off of tackles, crackbacks, all of this stuff that they used to do to really harass and attack offensive lines, that stuff has been taken out of the game. And because of that, they have really kind of scouted down the position because you don't need a rough and tough offensive line to protect your quarterback as much as you used to, because now most of the rules in the game protect you. So you don't need an offensive line. And to be honest with you, the athlete kind of outpaced the position where, because they made things a lot more softer on offense, man, all of the best and greatest athletes are playing on defense. All of your best, biggest athletes are not going to play guard. There's a lot of backup D tackles in the NFL that are all pro guards. I'm telling you. There's a lot of third string defensive ends in the NFL that are all pro tackles. They just don't want to play offensive line because there's no money in it. All right, from certain perspectives, and a lot of guys, they know what they know. But really, the athletes, they're interchangeable. It's kind of sad.
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously, it's what you grew up playing and chose to play. I mean, it's like the running back position.
Yeah.
The effects of the running back position in what it was for the last 5 years or so. Now it's starting to get paid again, but this 5 years isn't going to be felt for another 10 or 12 years. We'll see. The running backs might be really, really weak in about 10 years for a 5 to 7 year period, because the running back position was kind of scrapped by the league. But we're not going to feel those effects until much later on, when all those young kids who were choosing positions to start their NFL careers and Pop Warner are like, I'm not playing running back. There's no glory in running back. I want to be a receiver, a quarterback, whatever, a safety. So yeah, I mean, those effects aren't going to be felt for many years to come.
Awesome, man. Let's get into a couple of more super chats. Davism's Patriot Builders of Montana, 199. Bold take: Brock more interceptions than Jimmy G ever in 2025. How many? What's the most super interceptions that Jimmy has had in the season?
I don't know. 15,
that's a good.
Maybe?
Yeah, hold on.
I'll look up. Hold on. I'll look up Jimmy. You look up Brock real quick, because Brock had 13 last year? Well, dude, he's already tied it. Jimmy had 13. Yeah, Jimmy had 13 was the highest he had ever had.
Yeah, Brock had 12 in 2024.
Okay. So Jimmy had a season with 12, and Jimmy had so the only 2 full seasons Jimmy played, he had 12 and 13. So you're saying what, he throws 14? If he throws, I'm fine with him throwing 14 if he throws 35 touchdowns.
Yeah, 100%.
I don't care. I have 0. Throw 14, but you better throw 35 tutties.
Not mad at it at all. Let's get to the next one. Frisco Shields, $4.99. Are the 49ers losing games because Kyle doesn't believe in his system? No, I think Kyle believes in his system a little too much, to be honest with you. Like, that's the problem.
Kyle's arrogant about his system.
Yes. All right, let's get in. NAFCA broccoli. Kyle went defense heavy to give himself an excuse. Nah, Kyle went defense heavy because he owed it to Robert Saleh like he owed a bet to a bookie. He owed Robert Saleh those players. You think that they were going to tell them that they were rolling out from all those guys to get Robert Saleh in the door in the summer? Hell no. They weren't telling him that he was moving on from all of those guys. Dre. Nah. It's like, bro, you better get me out the way for defense.
I agree with that. Go pull up Corey's comment real quick. Corey Coleman.
In the chats?
Yeah, in the chats, yeah.
Corey Coleman. Where you at, Corey Coleman? Purdy was the 9th most pressured quarterback in the league last year, and the offensive line definitely wasn't improved. Do you really believe CMC will be the 2000 Offensive Player of the Year back again? No.
No, I don't either. But this stats will tell any story you want. This way you got to watch. Yeah. The stat that you're not putting out there that mirrors with this is Brock Purdy was also the 2nd most pressured quarterback based off of what he brought to the table, meaning he put himself in bad situations more than any other quarterback in the league other than Caleb Williams from a raw number perspective, but from a percentage perspective, he put himself in pressure situations more than any other quarterback in the NFL. So it doesn't always fall on the O-line. That is not me selling that the offensive line is fantastic, because I'm not.
Right.
But to say that he's number 9, you then have to marry that with him being number 1 from a percentage standpoint, which I believe is what you're looking at when you're looking at the 9th most pressured. You're probably looking at a percent. He was the reason for a lot of that. Like, he just was. It's not always the offensive line's fault.
He did it to himself like Plexico. We get it. Yo, Brock, got to stop shooting yourself in the leg.
Right.
Let's go. NAFCA. Nope. We already did NAFCA. NAFCA, $5. Thank you. I think it's possible for us to go to the Super Bowl with the schedule. I'm not saying they will, but it's possible. Love both of y'all. Keep doing y'all. Thank you, man. I don't know about Super Bowl, but once we get into the playoffs, I'm ready to talk about anything. Once we get in the playoffs. Dave Barclay, thank you. 0 comp for Steve. He would dominate today's NFL. I agree, man. I think that Steve Young, he was way too smart. And he's so bright. He was such a bright player. I liked Steve so much, man. Scotty D, I was at playoff games versus the Vikes where Steve had 50-yard rushing touchdown, end zone seats. He ran directly to me.
Oh,
come on, bro. Steve was a dog. That's fire. Imagine if they had cell phones out back then. That'd have been nuts. Splendiferous, $2. He would still be the GOAT. A little thin on top, but accurate. Oh, you talking about Steve?
I don't. Is he talking about Joe? Or is he talking about Steve? I don't know.
A little thin on top, but he's accurate. Oh, you talking about maybe Joe? He would still be the GOAT.
I'm like, Steve was pretty thick. I don't know.
Yeah. Davis and Patriot Builders of Montana coach Dave Sims, not Dave-isms. Though my thoughts are, Dave Sims. Dave-isms. I just thought it was Dave-isms. My bad. Dave Sims, Patriot Builders of Montana. Then Brock has 25 interceptions and 20 TDs and 2,200 and 2,500 yards.
Bro, if that happens, dude, if he has more interceptions than touchdowns,
first of all,
there's no way. It's just no way.
First of all,
NFL, no way.
We all know you. If that happened, number one, you wouldn't agree. You wouldn't take it directly. But dog, your Twitter would be hot. I know you be muting conversations left and right. I'm dropping this stat. I'm dropping that stat.
Bro, it's just not possible in today's NFL. There's no way.
There's no way. 25 interceptions. I don't think Brock would start. Kyle wouldn't let him get that bad. Broccoli, we need a QB. Thank you, NAFCA. Last super chat of the show. Joseph Ernberg, Brock will be one of the worst QB we've ever had. What's up with the negativity today?
Yeah,
Jesus.
Dude, listen,
my God.
It's so funny. I feel like What's being said is like how people perceive my view of Brock Purdy. It's like you guys are going way over the top. Like that's too much. It's way too much.
Hey man. Oh, we need a DB, not a QB. My bad, Navka. Sorry.
Oh,
Hey,
okay,
so
okay.
look, hey, bro, this is another good one. Tomorrow, we've got the 4-man front on Last Second Sports with Jesse Naylor. It's going to be a dope one. Jess, we made it through another Monday, man.
Yes, sir, man. Another cover. Oh, we got another super chat. Another cover too.
Splendiferous. $2. Thank you. Talk about Steve, man. You can see his scalp clearly. Oh, that's crazy.
Oh, you're talking about his. Okay.
Talk about his moonroof. All right.
Yeah, I got you.
Look, man. Jess was a great one. See you tomorrow. Can't wait for the 4-man front. Hey, man, when you guys get a chance, check out that thumbnail for the 4-man front. That's a good one. They got me with Nick Bosa. I'm maggot out. Talk to you, brother. Peace.